third tutorial of GameMaker 2. You might be wondering at this point about where we might be going with this game. I have a moving character, I have a ball on the screen, and we have a kind of maze here. So let's have a look at it and we'll think about what we might be able to do. Obviously, it's ideal if you plan your games early and then you implement them according to how you've decided to go. In this case, I did have some idea of what I wanted to do before I started. So I have here a character, I have some balls. There's two balls there. They don't move at the moment. And I have a maze. Ultimately, I want to get to this point at the end of the maze. And when I get to that point at the end of the maze, I think we should go to another level or another screen or have an end game screen, which we can do quite easily too. So that's one aim that we have. Excuse me. So some way in this game, I have to get back to the start here, to these balls. And kind of kick them along through the maze to get to the very end. I think I should have a whole lot of things I can pick up, maybe hamburgers I can collect on the way. And when I pick up a hamburger, it should disappear and I should get a score for collecting a hamburger. Ultimately, I'd also like to have an enemy that chases me around or randomly moves around so that if it connects with my little person here, the game's over and I've lost. At that point, I could have an end game screen that says I lost the game. We might try those two options in this case. So the first thing I need to do is to make our ball move. To make the ball move, we've got the ball and it's solid. We know how big it is. It's the same as the sprite. Excuse me. And then we will add an event that makes it move randomly. It needs to do that when we create the ball. So we'll put in a create event. And then again, what I want to do here is to bring across, I'll get rid of the room editor at this point. I'll bring across, and so you can see these tools. I'm going to start it moving in a random direction. Now the random directions there in my recently used, you'll find that if you go down to your movement and there's the random direction. So upon creating the ball, when it first starts in the screen, in the room, what we're going to do is to give it a random direction. It gives us a whole lot of directions. We could have a completely random direction by selecting any of these arrows. But because I ultimately want it to go at an angle across bouncing around the walls, one way or another, I'm going to give it a random direction. I'm also going to give it a speed, and the speed I'm going to give it is a 2. So you do that just by saying, okay, we're going to go into any direction, and wherever it's going, it's got a speed of 2 in that random direction. Now, the other thing we need to do before we play this game, apart from saving it, always save every little change you make. What you need to do next is to make it reverse or change its direction when it hits a wall. So the next thing we do is it's going to say, okay, if it hits a wall, if it collides with the wall, what happens? Well, what we want it to do is we want it to reverse direction. So we'll go down to movement again. We'll find reverse. We'll just say reverse direction. and we also want it to then go in a random direction. And I know this is a little odd in the way we have to do this, but well, that was actually a set direction, so we can't use that one. We're going to have a random direction, which is this one, set direction random. So that one with the curly arrow. And again, we're going to make it bounce back in any of those directions. The next thing I'm going to do, and I'm moving reasonably quickly here today, is I'm going to make it bounce when I collide with it myself. So we're going to add an event. If it collides with the player, what happens is again that what it will do is it will go into the movement again. And in our movement, what we're doing here is we're going to go in a reverse direction again. In this case, I'm simply reversing the direction from where it's in now, and I'm going to make it speed up because I'm pretending I'm kicking the ball. So I'm going to set the speed and I'm going to increase that speed to 3. All right, so I hope you've got that. The first thing is that if it collides that object, now you can click on these events to bring them up again. It reverses direction, it goes in that direction. When it starts, it has a random direction and a speed of 2. So we'll save all of that and now we'll run our changes to the game. So some of these tools and changes of direction aren't very logical, although we're limited to the tools that we have here, being the case that we're only using the drag and drop interface, and we can only use what we've been given to drag onto the programming screen. So now we'll see what happens here. There it goes. So I'm kicking it, but it's going away, isn't it? So I need to try and get out of the way. And there we go. I've got him moving. So I can kind of kick that ball up, but it's gone back down. I have to keep him going. I might try and get the other ball up as well. And so I'll try and change that around. And you can see that I've got it moving a bit. It's a bit tricky to get them going in the direction you want them to go in, and you have to follow them around. So I might be stuck to one ball here, and you can see how tricky it is, but I'm meaning to do that. It's not meant to be perfectly easy, and I need to be able to get it going a bit so that I can try and get it moving around the maze. Now, we're not scoring or anything yet. That's the next thing we kind of need to do to make sure it's doing something. And there we go, we're getting it across now. Now, might be a harder game to win than what I thought, but we'll see how we go. We're getting it down. I don't think I'll finish this. It's a bit tricky, and you'll have more fun with changing these directions and doing things yourself. But what I want you to do is to make sure you practice using these objects and changing directions. You can play around with all of this and get things moving yourself. So you can try and get what you want happening. Now, the other thing we need is a kind of the connection with the hamburger, isn't it? So I've got a hamburger here. I need to make an object out of that. So I've got hamburger sprite. I right click here. I create a new object. And when I'm creating that object, of course, I need a sprite. So I'm going to use the hamburger and I'm calling it hamburger object. I'll call it hamburger 1, which is a different name to the first hamburger. You really, in any programming, shouldn't use the same identical names for sprites and objects. Now, when the hamburger's made, we need it. Now, the destroying the instance of the particular hamburger means that we will destroy our hamburger, and it applies to the self automatically here. So hopefully this will allow us to collide with burgers and then have them disappear, which will later turn into scores in tutorial 4. So once I play this, I'll be finishing this particular tutorial and we will go into the scoring process, which is a little bit complicated, but you'll follow it through and I'm sure you'll all be successful if you watch these videos. Again, our program's compiling. You can see it compiling down the bottom. It's telling us what it's doing, writing different chunks to our thread, and we'll bring our game over here and we'll see what happens. We can kick things and then we've collided with a hamburger and it's disappeared. We're still kicking our balls around and I need to try and get on the other side of this ball if I want him down the other end as well. But obviously you're getting the idea, and I can just sneak through here and try and get the ball running away from me and I can collect the hamburgers. And I'm sure you're familiar with games that do this. You know, if you had a social marketing campaign for littering, you could make these junk food or rubbish or something. In any case, I'll leave that right here and I'll see you in the next tutorial.